Get started in just a second. I just want to share a file to the chat. All right. It looks like it is 8:30, so I'm going to get started. So happy to see everybody here and welcome. I've been looking forward to doing this presentation. Doesn't mean I wasn't scrambling on it till just about 5 minutes ago, though. So in normal academic fashion, I had to tweak last minute objectives. So this seminar is AI for research, and I want to just give you a little bit of background about myself. So I'm the Associate Director for Research Programs here in CVMBS, and I have been in this role for just a couple years, but I've been at CSU for 21 years. I started my career in biotech for a very short time. I spent about 4 years out on the East Coast working for a company called Boston Probes. And it was a small startup. It was a lot of hustle. It was a lot of fun. And then we got bought up by a large company called Applied Biosystems. And at that time, I would have had to move to Framingham, California to stay with the company. So I elected to actually make the move instead back to Colorado, where I was born and raised. And one of the best parts about that was I found my job at Colorado State University almost immediately. Worked in a lab for Dr. Howard Lieber in ERHS, and I did some initial like radiation biology, cancer biology stuff. Then we hired Dr. Tom Johnson, and he was a new hire. I met him in the hallway. He asked me to join his lab, and so I joined as a lab manager. And that was really neat because now it wasn't just my own little science, projects, which may or may not have worked given any given day. But it was the chance to work with a bunch of health physics master's and PhD students, and also students from his former institution. And there, a lot of my time was spent coordinating a pretty large DoD study and publishing a lot of papers, trying to get his former PhD students and DVM PhD students through the queue. Great learning experience, but I decided I needed a little bit more. I wasn't really comfortable with the the money I was making. Honestly, these jobs don't pay that much. And so I thought, why not take advantage of what CSU has to offer? They covered a portion of my MBA, so I did that at night while I was working full time. Finished that up in 2009 and interviewed with the dean's office not too long after. Made the move into the dean's office, and a lot of my first days were just looking at how much of our processes were paper and just really slow moving, to be honest, and trying to bring efficiency and bring things online. I built a lot of online applications for different programs, including this one. And I've just continued that professional development journey. I've really gotten involved in a lot of research development work, helping faculty target grants and writing training grants and things like that. But my current passion is increasing AI literacy for researchers in our college, and that's faculty, that's staff, that's trainees. And I think this comes at a really critical time. And I'll get into that in another slide, in the next slide. But I really thought it was important when I started listening to a few hours of podcast a week, and then it's generally just ramped up. So I'm now spending about 10 to 15 hours a week listening to podcasts, reading Substack blogs, reading books. It's been absolutely transformative. I get up at about 4 a.m. for some reason, so this is a lot of my morning work. I'm also enrolled in a program called the AI Mastery Program, and that's through a company called SmarterX. and I do demos and trainings. And then I also have done about 20 plus hours of AI specific professional development just around academia and our field. And to that end, I've been working with other people in college. I don't know if you know Brian Kelly. He's our AI specialist. He's working with the DVM team, but he's also providing other training. He does some hands-on workshops at the Diagnostic Medical Center often. But him, along with Tracy Webb, Adam Keel, our data scientists, and a few others, like our research IT folks, we thought it was time to really launch a bigger effort. So we're doing a community of practice around research, and so that'll be launching this fall. And just kind of stay tuned for that because you're always welcome to join. Okay. So with that said, let's get into it. Oh, let me go back. Okay. So in our objectives, what I really hope you get out of this is being able to describe the core principles of AI-assisted scholarship and really understand that connection of AI as a collaborator, not as a replacement. And then as we get into the research part of it, just how you formulate that clear research-focused question and develop a topic map. So I'm going to teach you some of the tools. Some of them are blended from when I was helping people publish their papers. The old way of doing notes, the old way of doing literature searches, it's pretty tedious. And so I've been able to rethink some of those processes, similar to like when I first came into the dean's office, as to what that might look like. And then, you know, watching other people talk about it too. Some of that's blended in. And then how you design and execute an AI-assisted literature review. And this is really meant to help you develop that introduction section of your poster, of your abstract, really understanding the field that you're in right now and trying to understand what that looks like. And then what I use to a tool to I absolutely love it is Notebook LM. If you're not using it, I highly recommend. It's a way to really interact with your sources in the way that's best for you to learn. I think a lot of traditional learning is you know, not targeted to everybody. So this is just really creative ways to get into the materials you're going to be working with where it might otherwise be daunting. And then applying ethical and academic integrity standards by disclosing AI assistance. And I'll teach you how to cite your use of AI. So one of my favorite writers and authors is Ethan Mollick. He's a professor at Wharton Business School at the University of Pennsylvania. What I love about him is there's a lot of people out there in industry and corporate world talking about AI, and it doesn't always translate to academia. It doesn't feel the same. And so he really comes at it from not only an instructor, but you know, how we do AI research and other things. And so I read his book, Co-Intelligence, and I sent a podcast along to you guys that I hope you had a chance to listen to. But one of the concepts Ethan really gets into is when it first hits you where we are in the AI landscape right now, it can be overwhelming. I mean, and not just like lightly interacting, but this is when you get it, like, oh my gosh, this is where we are. This is the state of things, and this is how fast it's moving. I ended up having my 3 sleepless nights. And the way Ethan describes it is the first night is the excitement, that thought this could change absolutely everything. And not just in a few fields, but across every single field. It's going to change the way that you know, you're going to get your degrees in the future. This is going to change the way students go through undergrad. This is going to change the way you bank. This is going to change the way you receive targeted marketing. But even bigger, this is going to change the way our government works. And I think we've all recently seen some military strategy changes, specifically with the drone attack in Russia. That was a lot of AI algorithms and very savvy thinking on the part of the Ukraine. Regardless of your feeling on the war, this is AI-assisted warfare. So The second night is fear. Like, wait a minute, if everything's going to change and I don't even know what that looks like, how am I going to do my job in the future? Am I going to have a job? Are there going to be jobs in my field? One of the most common questions I've heard lately is anytime I talk to a parent of a teenager, say, what should my teen go into? Like, what's going to be there? And that's unclear, but I think one of the best pieces of advice I've seen given, and I've given myself, is just spend time using the tools and developing your critical thinking now. Figure out how to interact with AI, and then you'll have a insight in, and new jobs will be emerging. The way you're doing your jobs will be changing. But just by doing those things, you can stay abreast. And then that third night is getting your plan together, formulating, like, what am I going to do about this? So for me, that was that, picking up that co-intelligence book, really getting further into the material and spending a lot of time every single day using AI. And at first it was just a couple times a day, and now I co-work with it. And I have some custom GPTs I've built to help me do routine processes. I use it in research development stuff. So we had a climate collaboration retreat a couple weeks ago, and I used AI to come up with some different plans and models. Used it in a grant that we recently wrote with Greg Dean, looking at all the faculty that were on the grant as mentors and how they collaborated with each other, whether it was publications or presentations or even co-mentoring. So, apologies. The biggest thing I think Ethan said that really resonated was that 10 hours of hands-on AI experience. So before the seminar, I sent out a bunch of just meant to be fun tasks, personal ways to interact, not using work, to just get a feel for the Gemini products, specifically the Google products. And so I had sent out instructions on how you can get your free student account, pro account with Gemini. And that is quite a bit of savings, because it would be $20 a month in this. So if you sign up by June 30, you have it for a year. And that gives you full access to Gemini Pro, but it also gives you access to their video products, their image generation, and Notebook LM, as well as a few other products. I personally have subscriptions to ChatGPT, Gemini, and Anthropic's Claude. I don't have a subscription for Perplexity anymore. I dropped that, but I have a couple other tools that I do subscribe to. It's worth it to me. It's quite an investment, but if you guys can get it for free, I think it's phenomenal. So one of the other concepts that Ethan brings up is the jagged frontier of AI. And what that means is AI can be really effective in very surprising ways and very ineffective in other also surprising ways. And it's always changing. So I think it was last year, AI, a lot of the LLMs, large language models, could not tell you how many R's were in the word strawberry. Then they released, I think ChatGPT was first, and they released their first reasoning model. And that one actually solved that. Shortly thereafter, there was a whole nother kind of diagnostic developed called Humanity's Last Exam, which was designed for AI not to be able to pass. Models within the last few months have been passing at pretty high percentages, so they're getting higher scores. I sent out some stuff about the Gemini products within, let's see, 2 weeks ago was a huge AI week. So we had model drops from the, all three companies or the leading companies. So OpenAI, ChatGPT dropped releases, Gemini dropped a bunch, and Anthropic did a model update. So in just 1 week, in just days, everything changed again. So that's kind of that jagged frontier. And that 20 hours is supposed to help you figure out where those edges are and what they mean. One of the edges I'll mention is right now, LLMs are really bad at spreadsheets. You can give them some flat data, but they don't do well with working with a 2D, object in a 1D plane. They're not good at tabs. They're not good at formulas, none of this. It basically takes an image and then tries to process from that. But as of last week, there's some changes, and so I have to go test them. But there's a little bit more capability, and I would expect that to get immensely better by the end of this year. Four of the principles that Dr. Mollick goes through are inviting AI to the table. And that means in everything you're doing, think, is there an opportunity here to work with this material in a different way using AI? Is there a different way to think about this problem? And it can be really slow at first and then pick up steam. Second part is being that human in the loop. And what that means is not trusting what you get blindly. It's verifying that all the claims are accurate, not putting forth materials that you have not deeply looked at and spent the time reviewing. We've seen lawyers get in trouble with this already, even recently, where they're put forth case briefs that had made up things. AI really loves to hallucinate references. Don't know why. The third concept is to treat AI like a person, and that's a technique. Obviously, not a philosophy. AI is definitely not a person. But when I view AI as an entry-level, very enthusiastic, pretty competent intern, and I delegate tasks to AI with detailed instructions, understanding that this intern is not a mind reader, it can really screw things up if you don't give the specific instructions. I'm a lot more tolerant of what comes out. And I think that's one of the funny things that happens with using AI. At first, people can be really critical at even the smallest mistake, but if that was a human being, maybe not. And another thing that I've really learned is sometimes AI is better than the next available human at a task, because I might not have the resources for a next available human. I don't have resources for my own staff. So I treat AI as part of my staff, theoretically. And then the last concept I think is really important, and that is assume this is the worst AI you'll ever use. And that means whatever flaws you're seeing today, they are the absolute worst today than they will ever be. This will only get better. AI will only get more powerful. At what rate? I don't know. Right now, we're seeing new model releases with significant gains about every 3 months, sometimes faster. I don't know what the labs have in progress. I don't know what the next unlock is. I have a wish list, but we'll just see. I think that's most of the things I want to talk about there. So this is kind of where I think AI shines in the research process. So AI is fantastic at brainstorming. It's generative. That means that it never tires. You can say, I want 5 good ideas. I want 50 good ideas. You can give it a process of saying, generate 50 ideas. The next step is evaluate each one on its merits given these criteria, then present these ones forward with XYZ information. That's really powerful. That's something that we don't do that well. I get pretty tired after like 15 ideas. AI is decent at finding patterns. Be cautious though, that's part of that expert in the loop. You need to know your material before you're delegating it to AI. Automating tedious tasks, even little funny ones like, oh, here's this huge list of people, sort them in alphabetical order from this Word document. Because in Word doesn't sort, right? And then that just does that really quickly. Or, doing other little things. There's a lot of things that we do are super tedious. Some of us more than most. Summarizing, AI is pretty decent at summarizing. It's one of its inherent capabilities. It's something you might have seen already in Google, like summaries at the top of web searches. But you can use this pretty effectively. Literature discovery, which is what we're going to go in today, and understanding the literature, and then also in drafting. And what I mean by that is like it's great at the outline stage. I'm really hesitant to use it for writing But if it's writing low stakes things like an email or, hey, here's a thread of 15 emails. This got really complicated. Can you first summarize, then help me communicate back? It's a very common use case for me. All right. So where to be cautious. And this is some of my experimentation, and some of this is from Dr. Mollick again, and other people that I've listened to. So when it's coming to developing expertise or learning, we're going to hit on that because this is the highlight of being a student, right? This is the point of learning, is to struggle with the materials so that you retain them. How you struggle with the materials is up to you. But if it's doing the work for you, it's not great. So there was a blog post, The Great Homework Apocalypse, I think last year, where they were really showing that AI was being used heavily in high schools and even some grade school, I think middle schools and colleges, to just do the assignments, because it's very much appealing when you have a huge workload to just delegate the work. And if it's good enough, then it's good enough, right? Well, no, because this is going to shortchange you in the long run. If we're really in an economy where we're going to have 10 to 15% unemployment, or at least underemployment, as was suggested by Dario Amode last week, or we're going to be in great upheaval, you need to find that thing that differentiates you, and also differentiates you from your peers. So if you have people that are using AI routinely to do the work instead of as a co-intelligence, yeah, it's just not going to pay off. And I think this is one of the topics that faculty are very nervous about, is how do we make sure people aren't cheating? And the reality is if you're going to cheat, you can get away with it. I've heard crazy stories from different articles I've read of things students have done to work around AI detection. So, but you're only shortchanging yourself. It has blind spots, right? This is biased data. There's just going to be things it doesn't know. One of the crazy things I didn't get at first was AI will treat certain things as important and other things as not. The things it treats as important are typically based on frequency. So the number of times it finds it. So importance for AI equals frequency. That's not going to help in scientific research, right? Because it's not going to find those hidden gems, key findings, at least using a general LLM. Now, if you have machine learned trained models that have been, deeply developed for a certain field, okay, maybe. But right now it's blind spot. When you have zero tolerance accuracy, think about clinical diagnosis and things like that, dosages. You really want to make sure you're getting those right. And I think that's, a lot of law stuff too. That having fake reference or fake cases was of no hope to those lawyers. There's also ethical nuances. So if you're using AI in a way that might actually harm somebody or provide harm in some way, then, that's a second thought. And then final critical decisions. You don't delegate it when you're making those things, because at the end of the day, anything you generate is your responsibility. All right. And then just briefly talking about the future in veterinary research. Now, this is theoretical, but this is just some of the things I've already seen. There's been a lot of seminars out there. Veterinary medicine isn't my field, but I've worked with veterinary researchers for a very long time. Some of the key unlocks, and remember, not all LLMs are not the only AI. There's many forms. So AI diagnostics have been phenomenal, and a lot of these are specifically trained systems. Systems can analyze blood work and pathologies in minutes instead of hours. They have higher accuracy. And one of the other cool things is they have a consistency advantage. So unlike humans that can fatigue with, continued analysis all day long, or maybe something comes up in life, it can, create issues with the decision making. So at least you can have, if you're using well-trained AI, more consistency. Drug discovery is another huge unlock. I know a lot of people are looking to, especially in human medicine, but definitely in veterinary medicine. Medical imaging. This one's a little bit more obvious. And then big data analysis. Hold on, need a little coffee. So one of the coolest things I've been hearing about from Dr. Webb and Adam is they're looking at the medical record systems and what the potential for if we were able to connect to the UC health system and match up people and patients and look for trends and really be able to get into our data. It's a really powerful unlock, and I think a lot of veterinary schools are really pursuing that, especially ones that have adjacent medical schools. All right, so I dropped this paper in the chat first, and this is the one I want to use for the use case today. It was a paper that really resonated with me. Dr. Lombard has, I think, 2 trainees in the program, and Jason and I have never met face to face, but Chloe Stonkamp-Stram, second author, was a DVM PhD student here in the program, and she was phenomenal and she's going through. I was always interested in her work and what she was doing in that space. And Chloe graduated some years ago. She's now taking a faculty position, and she was so kind as to answer my request to have a one-on-one conversation about the paper with her and, get her insights, that expert in a loop part, before I started working with it. And immensely grateful. And the question, and we're going to get into this just a little bit better later, is how you find your research questions. But for the sake of this today, I really wanted to just hone in on this one. So the question we're going to kind of use variations of throughout this whole process is, what are the dominant pathways and facilitating factors for intra-herd transmission among dairy cattle for high pathogenic avian influenza H5N1? And the reason I think this is really interesting is because there's not consensus around this question, not yet. This is based on an outbreak that happened in the United States. And it's been Dr. Lombard and Chloe, they have data from before, during, and after this pandemic. And so I thought it was just phenomenal. This is a review article. I do want to mention that, which is great because it goes really into a lot of different questions and angles. And so it gave me a vast amount of information to pick from. And I think we all kind of focused on these spillover events that are happening, right? That come out of nowhere, something from the birds, migratory birds, whatever it may have been, caused this to, get picked up by cattle. And then from cattle, it spread to other cattle, and, there's impact on the milk supply and people's understanding, and then being transmitted to local poultry farms and that huge economic impact. So there's just a lot of great questions around this. And as far as research papers go, it's nice to find one that has so much depth. So these are the tools I'm using today. I actually have about 15 tools that I use in my lit search process and research review. And it was really hard to pick, but I ended up going with one that's pretty general and useful and has some tools that I really like, has some that I don't care for, but it's called SciSpace. And that is a tool that acts as, so one of the things you may not know is large language models, when they do their literature and really go looking for information, do their deep research, they are limited to open access papers. That's a huge limitation, right? There's a lot of papers behind paywalls. So there's been a lot of products that have been developed specifically for researchers that access a different corpus of research. And so SciSpace actually has access to, I'll think of the name later, but it's a huge mass amount of biomedical citations, larger than PubMed. It has access to Google Scholar. It has access to Web of Science. It also accesses preprints. That's actually a little problematic in my view, but it is what it is. Gemini, that is just the large language model we're going to use today. Like I said, I work equally in ChatGPT and Gemini. If you ever have a question on which of these products matches in using the OpenAI system, I can tell you that. And then Notebook LM, because again, it's my favorite, absolute favorite tool, AI tool out there. There's two additional tools that are a little bit more controversial, and these are AI writers. So there's Gemini AI and PaperPal, and those have kind of come out as probably the leading scientific writers. So if we have time, I'll touch on them. I will definitely address the concerns and limitations of them as well, though. So this is the process I came up with. If this was a PhD dissertation, this is actually this would be much longer. But for summer research, I think that this is a pretty good model. And so each of you is working in a lab. You have a research topic that you've been working on. And what I'm going to walk you through is going from setting up your workspace. That's your note-taking space. This is your single source of truth. Then mapping and outlining your topic. Then, only after you've really mapped and outlined, going down, triaging and downloading papers. Then doing a human review of the papers, and I'll give you a quick overview on how to do that without spending time reading word for word. And then digesting the papers interactively, creating some concept maps for visuals, and then there's time drafting an introduction. I am actually going to go into those, and then finally the ethical and the responsible use of AI and how to cite it appropriately. So I'll make sure I get to that. All right, so one of the most important things is setting up your workspace, and that can be, I'm going to do it in SciSpace, but this can be a Google Doc, this can be a OneDrive doc, this could be a fancier note-taking system, or working in a Notebook LM. But you need to pick where all your information is going to live and creating a folder system around that. And so it's really useful for your note-taking, for drafting your outline, tracking your citations, everything. So with that, I am going to change the screen I'm sharing. Okay. And bear with me. Okay. So here we are in SciSpace. And this one I have, this one actually have a paid account because I got a huge discount, but the free version works just fine. And the area I'm going to go into, you'll see here on the left side that we have a home space, a chat with PDF, literature review, an AI writer, and I haven't used the AI writer. Find topics, paraphrase or citation. So there's a whole bunch of different things. And I'm going to go to this find topics. And the first search I'm going to enter is that question that I already said. So I want to find topics. And it suggested some other things, but I'm pretty happy with the research questions, so I'm going to leave it as it is. And now it's doing a standard search, and in this period of time, it's going to work for a little bit, and it's going to come up with some initial papers. Okay. So it says we have, this is AI generated text. I will tell you right now that SciSpace is sitting on top of the ChatGPT 3.5 model. Not my favorite model for the way it writes. Still too verbose, a little bit too verbose, makes stuff up a little bit more often. AI has ChatGPT has better models out there. I hope that SciSpace chooses to update their system. So it has this, but the key thing is I'm going to save this to a notebook. And actually, I have a notebook started just to help. Wrong notebook. Okay. And so here's my HPAI and cattle notebook. I've popped it out to full screen, and I'd usually work with this side by side. So I'd have the SciSpace on the left side and this in a separate window to the right. But from here, I picked up some concepts like, okay, it could be close contact transmission, could be fomites, contaminated surfaces, potentially airborne. Now it gets into some stuff that's not really modes of transmission, but there are biosecurity measures and dairy cattle management practices. So again, it's kind of making this stuff up. But I can also think for myself. I'm like, what else can it be? And this is very early. So I'm just trying to get a map. You'll see that I have these little yellow buttons next to it. That's a note-taking practice where when I need more information, I leave the buttons yellow. And then when I have complete information on that topic, I might flip them to green. And what complete information would look like is to have some sources and have concepts. SciSpace is doing something right now that some people like, and I'm mixed on, which is if I put spillover from migratory birds and I put a space or put other things, it says can lead to significant health risk. Oh, it has some sources right now because of the way mine is set up. So that's not too bad, but otherwise it would just make up text or generate text. And sometimes that's fine if you're stuck getting writing, but like what I really wanted was this outline. And so these are the things I came up with on my, by reading the Lombard paper actually, and then also going through some other stuff. And so I have an outline. I also want to show you the other thing for topic generation. So I'm going to flip over to Google and ask it. Actually, I'm going to show you something called, I want to show you how to use a deep research prompt if you've never used one, because they're absolutely powerful. So the first thing I'm going to do in Gemini, I'm going to say, I'm going to paste my research question. And I'm going to say, help me write a deep research prompt around the question. Because I want to make sure it does a decent job. And I'll do that in ChatGPT. I'll like, help me write this deep research prompt before I actually launch this. And it's thinking right now, and it's going to come up with a research plan. And we're going to let that run in the background as we go back to SciSpace. Or maybe we'll just go back. Well, it's being slow this morning. So I'm going to show you what that looked like. All right, so I asked it, same question. It came up with this plan where it said, I'm going to go out and I'm going to research these websites, remembering that LLMs can only access what's open access and might go to other sites. So it decided to dive into all these things. I do a review of it and then say, okay, that looks good. And I would say start research. What that comes back to is it now has done the job of entry-level analyst, and it has created this entire report, which I can export to Google Docs and use as an outline to put into my workspace. And I think this is pretty in-depth. It also has sources, like where did it go get this from? So it's getting some papers that are out there. So it does have some backup, but because AI is so good at generating fake sources or attributing things, I would always double check these. But by glancing through, I can see that it's pretty good. One of the other things I always do is say, oh, and by the way, this report is pretty significant and has all the sources at the bottom. But again, because it's generated so much content, you're going to have to spend time with it, making sure it's right. So then the other part I said, can you create an outline from the research? Because TLDR, I just want to know those basic things. So it does all that. And now I have other things to look at when I go back. Nope. So one of the other questions that I like to do is look for knowledge gaps. So some of this has come from the deep research report that I just ran. Some of this is from looking at the discussion section of Dr. Lombard's paper. And this just kind of helps as you're organizing your thoughts. And so flipping back to PowerPoint, it's, oh, and the other part about the deep research is your prompt quality matters. So if you use general words, then it's not going to be good. So I use AI to help refine my questions. Like, can you make this more specific? How can you make this better? And then thinking about what you want it to output. So I had a whole deep research report. What I should have asked for is also that bottom summary. So you can tell AI when you're doing deep research reports, what format you want to see it in. Do you want to just see high-level bullet points? Do you want to get an executive brief out of it? Where are you going with that? With SciSpace, you're finding topics and you're focusing on keywords, not papers. So you're building a feel for the feeling, feeling for the field. I've got words today. All right. So what I would do from here is like, if I wanted to ask about what evidence is there that supports direct contact transmission of HPAI in cattle. So I can go back and ask a new question. I ask that question. And again, it's actually looking at some papers and then trying to generate more topics. And from there, it can talk about, see, this isn't that great. Should have used a different. How about the aerosolized letters? So that's where we hit the limitations of SciSpace. It's often not that exhaustive. Some fields it does really well in, like if you're doing broader topics. All right, that aside, we have an initial outline. And now we're going to use SciSpace in the next step to triage and download papers. And this is a pretty in-depth process. This is the majority of roulette search. So this is formulating your questions. So, what are the relevant things that you're trying to explore? Then searching and retrieving. And then I'm going to show you what this looks like in SciSpace with its triage table, and then how you screen the abstracts and pick which PDFs to download. All right, going back to SciSpace. So now I'm going to go into Lit Review. And I'm going to go back and grab this question again, just because I just want to show you it. I'm going to go back to standard. This is free version when I'm doing standard searches. So it's picked a few papers. So it's giving top, and I'm gonna load 10 more. All right, so the first column it will have is insights. So it's read the paper and it is saying what the study's doing. I added the column TLDR. This is an automatic column, which is phenomenal because it gives me kind of that right to the point. Another column I really like is, oh, this is a custom one that I created. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. But the summarized abstract is a really powerful one. So it takes this paper all the way to from the left column and gives you a summarized abstract. Okay. So I created my own column. And so I said, create a new column. You can title it, give it some instructions. So the ones I wanted to know was, what are the transmission modes? So the question I ask is, say, what potential transmission modes did this paper cover? And so it's answering based on each of these papers. It helps me figure out what to screen out. So if I'm going through here and I'm reading, I really want to know that this paper really focuses on the transmission modes and not something else. So I'll read through some of these. And the biggest thing with literature reviews is getting really specific about your research question. There's a whole lot of fluff you could pull in, and it's hard to find the edges of what's important and what's not. But a lot of people can end up with 50 to 100 papers pretty rapidly, and that's not really great. So having, doing this little bit of a triage process is super important. And as many questions as you need. So like, what if you just wanted to look for papers that covered, double-blind clinical trial studies, and you didn't want to see anything else? This would be a good time to ask, or a place to ask that question of all the papers. And the ability to ask it across all the papers is just so powerful. This is one of the biggest advances, I think, in literature searches in AI, and a lot of tools use it, but just that ability to query everything all at the same time. And so like the insights, this paper doesn't, like on number 9, if I thought that that wasn't really relevant because it doesn't talk about cows, I'm just going to delete it and not have it in my list. And this one I also don't really care for. But let's say I wanted this paper. Oh, and this is one of the parts I was going to talk about with the preprints. So preprints are papers that have been submitted to an open platform. They have not gone through peer review yet. That means there's nobody that's reviewed them for accuracy. There's been, they just haven't had that. So some people say exclude them entirely. I think one of the cool things with AI is I can say, here's the full body of published work. Where do these papers, what unique insight do they contribute to the field? And what are the, standing opinions on that? But the fact that SciSpace pulls in preprints so frequently when it's a newer topic is just take it with a grain of salt. There is one, this particular one, Stones, that's already had some citations, even as a preprint. So I actually want to grab it. So I'd click on it, and now I have this pulled up in SciSpace. Now I could chat with the paper, right? And just get into it right here. And that means you can just ask any kind of questions like methods used in this paper. It gives you lots of little examples that you could start with. And they're just triggered here. But I really want to just grab the paper. So I'm going to go up to this DOI, which is its address where it lives. I'm going to click on that. And here I have the preprint, and I can click download PDF. Well, I've already done this, so we'll skip that step. But that's how I would grab the papers. Some people, especially if you're doing a larger project, would use a reference manager here too. The one I like to use is Zotero because it interacts with a lot of AI tools online. Oh, and that's another thing. I remember Chloe telling me that the reference citation extraction from Zotero isn't great. Great, just throw it in an LLM and make it cite them correctly. So in whatever format is requested by the publisher. So that's how you grab a paper. All right. From this point, let's see where we are on the map. Okay, so we have our triage table, we've queried it, screened some abstracts, downloaded the PDFs. Now what? Now we're going to do the human part. Okay, so when I was first helping people with their publications, this was in the field of health physics, and a lot of this was laser work, and that was something I had no background in because I got my undergrad in molecular biology and nothing to do with this kind of science. So I had a very kind faculty member teach me their method for how they read papers. And the first thing is thinking about the title. What's the core topic? What species? What method? What can you glean from that? And what can you get from the keywords that are listed? Then reading that abstract. And that's kind of your mini version of the whole study. It gives you your context, the aim, the methods, the key results, the conclusion. Then hop onto the first paragraph of the introduction. Sometimes it goes 2 paragraphs, and that's giving you your broad background and big picture. This is a place where you might want to take a few little notes that can come up later when you're writing your intro. The last paragraph is going to give you what the study did exactly, what were the research questions, and then skip over the materials and methods and the results and go all the way to the discussion, read that first paragraph. This is the author written synthesis of their findings. And then down at the bottom, that last paragraph is the impact, broader implications, future directions. Now, this definitely isn't 100% of the time, but the amount that it that it works is pretty phenomenal. And this is where you'll kind of get that feel of what's in the paper and what the key ideas might be. From there, you certainly can scan the rest of it, especially looking maybe through some of the figures and the images. I think those are some of the most valuable portions. But if you have a huge stack of stuff or you're just short on time, this is not great to spend too much time if you have a stack of 15 papers. But you do want to get a feel for them. But now the most important part is we're going to go and digest these papers interactively in Notebook LM. And so with your student paid account, or free account, I should say, you can upload up to 300 sources, and those sources can be PDFs, MP3s, text docs, Google Docs, Google Slides, website links, YouTube links, paste to text, anything you can think of, not spreadsheets, and not images per se, but still gives you, well, if it's a website that has a link to an image, then okay, yes, it can read that. The power of Notebook LM is it's grounded in your data sources. It's not going outside. So one of the first notebooks I created, so I deal a lot with training grants and dealing with post-award policy. People have questions. Hey, this came up. The student's out on maternity leave. How do we pay them? How do we terminate them? NIH has probably 600 to 700 pages of policy. And while I've read the policy a bunch of times, I can't tell you exactly where it is. So I use Notebook LM and I have these sources loaded, and I just I copy paste the question in, and then I interact with that. I'm like, okay, well, let's go dig deeper for like, oh, what are the terms and conditions? I can even, upload an award notice and search through those terms and conditions. So it's really powerful policy questions, but when it comes to like digesting content, phenomenal. It's got the 3 panels. I'm going to show you it. It can create a whole bunch of things from it. Create mind maps, study guides, briefing docs, FAQs, timelines. You can save your notes in there. And then it has this audio overview that I just think is so incredible. Well, let me go back and switch to Notebook LM. All right. So here we are in the left pane. I've titled this one H5N1 and dairy cattle. This is how you upload your sources. You can just click on it to upload the PDFs that you have in a folder, which I've already pre-done. I can, if I wanted to link a website, you just paste the URL. Again, if it was behind a paywall, it wouldn't work. It has to be open access. So like a New York Times article, maybe not. And what I want to ask is right now, so it's given me sort of this overall text that it's generated in the middle, and in your chat, this is where you're kind of generating materials. And that's somewhat useful, but I want to get more specific. So one of the first things I did was create a mind map. And so I clicked on this and no, it's doing a new one now. But I'm going to open it. And so here's what a mind map looks like. So this is kind of covering the 7 papers, and it's going into this, and I want to know about the outbreak in dairy cattle. And then, oh, actually it launched its own little chat. I didn't know it could do that. Okay. Let me reopen this. Okay. So outbreak in dairy cattle, if you actually click on it, apparently it launches a whole new topic, which is fantastic. And I want to know transmission in cattle. So there's intra-herd, and it's breaking out all these potential things. Inter-herd, link to shipment of infected cattle. Possible fomites, like shared people, people that work on both, work on multiple dairy farms, equipments that go between them, veterinarians that go between the farms. And yeah, so a mind map is a great initial way to work with that data. It's kind of like your outline, actually. Another thing it can do, so I clicked on it, discuss what these sources say about the outbreak in dairy cattle in the context. So if I wanted a better question, actually, I think I would go back to transmission and intra-herd. No, I'm going to go to that and see. That does a question? It does. Okay. Potential modes of representation. Okay. So it's going to do that. Another thing I can do is generate a study guide. So I pre-generated that. Oh, and this is the really cool thing about Notebook LM is I can click specifically and it can tell me which source it used. And if I want to click on it, it's going to go actually and highlight that section of the text. So this is a lot better than if you're generating a deep research report and using that to generate yours, because you don't have to do as much checking. This is again grounded in the source, so I want to know where exactly. So that's in Lombard, that in like. I never get sick of this. I just think it's so powerful. Okay. Did a study guide. And and the other thing is once it generates this, I can save this to a note. And so now it's over here in my kind of stored area. So until you save something to a note, it doesn't make it all the way over to that right plane. So just by clicking the study guide, I can go find where that was. Nope. Should I go back? Oh. And here we go. So here's the study guide. It just came up with a bunch of questions. This would be far more interesting if it was for an actual class, but that could be a useful way to interact with it. Click back on Studio. I want the timeline. And so based on all these papers, it has a month by month breakout of everything that has happened according to the papers. Another funny thing it does is creates a cast of characters, which is hilarious when it's publications. So it gives like Jason Lombard is affiliated with CSU, contributes to the risk assessment of the anyway. Some of it's not that interesting. I haven't used the cast of characters yet for anything, but it is there. Another thing it can do is I want the briefing doc. Here it is. And gives the, overview of what you looked at. What were the key findings, virus origin spread, viral characteristics. What I also think is really powerful about Notebook LM is it's sitting on top of Gemini 2.5. And I don't think I went into this, but large language models vary greatly by the size, the parameter, and the parameters that it was trained on, and then the post-training inference. And what that means is if you're using ChatGPT 3.5, that was a non-reasoning model and had a lot of issues. Those models have since been updated. I think the last release of a non-reasoning was GPT 4.5, which is a great writer, or 4.0. And then the reasoning models are 0.1, 0.3. They're terrible at naming. They're absolutely terrible at ChatGPT. They're not much better at Gemini, and reasoning models simply just think about a problem for a longer time. And so, and they will show you your thinking, which is phenomenal. And I'll show you why in just a little bit. But it's hallucination checking. So the larger the model, the better quality. In Gemini 2.5, there is something called the chatbot arena, and people will go in and put prompts, and then they will rate how well they like different responses, and it kind of pits the models against each other. There's also a whole lot of other measures and benchmarks, and without going into the depth of them, 2.5 is kind of sitting on top of everything right now. Google is absolutely dominating, even though they don't have the same brand recognition as ChatGPT. So if you go use the free version of ChatGPT, number one, your data is not protected. It can be used for booster training. That's part of the getting behind that paid plan. Number two, the quality is not that great. A lot more errors, a lot more issues, and you don't have access to a lot of the products. When you're using something like 2.5, which it switches between reasoning and non-reasoning where needed, it kind of makes a judgment call, but it's such a powerful model. And you're really going to see far better quality out of it than if you were to go use something free. There's a lot of junk out there on the market. I remember when DeepSeek, that got released, and I hope none of you have used it. Number one, it is not a model that was trained for less. There's a lot of evidence that they basically lied on what they were doing. And then number two, it distilled a model from the US. So, and the biggest thing, anything you put in there is stored in China, which is subject to being grabbed by the People's Republic of China. It's not a safe model to use. So I'm not sure if anyone had used it, but if you ever hear about it, steer clear. So this is actually using 2.5 to generate a lot of the text. It's why it looks a little bit better than what we saw back in SciSpace. It has a lot more depth to it. My favorite feature, period, is the audio overview. So this was loaded, but it deleted itself. So one of the cool things is when I come in here, I can say generate an audio overview. I can also choose to customize it. And when I customize it, I say, focus on just this one question, okay? I can also choose the length of the output, and that's phenomenal, but I am very much an audio learner. So I like to listen to the podcast, and I'm gonna just start playing it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine it's early 2024.
Can you hear that?
Farmers, especially
get a thumbs up in the chat.
Texas Panhandle, they start seeing something really concerning, kind of strange with their cows.
Okay.
Yeah, the animals just seem off, not eating right. generally unwell.
And then the big one, the really visible thing impacting the bottom line, a sudden, pretty dramatic drop in milk production.
Right. And the milk itself wasn't normal. It looked weird, described as thick, creamy, yellowish, almost like
So this actually goes really deep into the question on transmission for 20 minutes. And then if I didn't like it, I could discard it and ask it other questions and just keep going. Another thing you can do is it has interactive mode. And this is so cool because you can play your audio and you can type in questions, or you can just ask it questions through your microphone and interrupt the speakers, and they will go into that. And then they will go back to their original path and their script. But say you wanted to, like, you had a really complex topic from one of your classes and you really wanted to work with it to understand it better. So you could do a series of audio interviews and keep on asking questions of the materials. And I think it's a really powerful way to learn if that's your learning style. But like I said, generative AI, you can learn, if you can learn visually, then you can do that. One of the reasons I don't copy paste notes a lot of times, and I will actually just type them into my new note screen, that single source of truth, is because I also learn by writing things down. And so I know what kind of learner I am, and I maximize that through doing these things. I do watch a lot of demos online. I watch them at about 1.5 speed. But I get distracted. And so I like to do it in short bites. So that is kind of the overview of Notebook LM. I will show you a couple quick other questions, which is being able to query the notes. And so, like, let's go with this one. What are the key biosecurity recommendations preventing disease? And so I'm going to paste this one in. And it will go through the papers and it will start pulling any information that they have on this. Like I said, I just loaded 7 in. I could have 50 papers and it would do the same thing. And look how fast it does it. And so this is the other part. You have to read everything. And make sure that you agree with the statements that it's making. And that's helpful when you can go, okay, does this really say strengthening biosecurity protocols remains the most prudent approach? And here's the citation. So that's from Rodriguez. Or I can ask a whole bunch of different questions of it. But for the sake of time, let's get back in here. And see, it's 9:38. Okay, we're on track. Here's one of the more powerful uses of AI, which is visualizing concepts and data. It's kind of unnerving the first time you do some of this, in that a lot of times it opens a code window. So it's working in Python or another language to generate your infographic, different visualizations. So you'll watch it code and the papers, side of the page is just filling up, and then all of a sudden you have that thing you asked for. And the other really cool part about it is it's iterative. So you don't have to one-shot it. Like, if you don't like how that looks, say, okay, no, but use this color scheme. I want this on a white background. Now I want it horizontally. It can help with really complex visualizations. And that was like this network connection map that was between 30 different faculty on, 4 different modes. We wanted to present that as a single image to a grant agency. And it was just incredible. And even better was the fact that the original grant we had put in, so this was for a renewal submission, had a similar thing. And that image was generated by Dr. Zaid Abdo. And he used special software and that he had a license for. And it took him an extra bit of time. Well, this time through, he was super busy. And I showed the picture of what he had generated as a pic, like I uploaded as a picture. I explained what had been done and then said, okay, given that, here's my new set of data. please make the same image. And it did. And I was like, oh, but his has like a little bit different arc between each person. So do that. Oh, wait, but now maybe center the people a little better. And I ended up creating an incredible figure just by talking with the code. But also you can do natural language to visualization. So you can just describe an image that you want to generate. I think everybody saw the Ghibli images that came off ChatGPT the first week that Imagine was released. Google's product inline, pretty amazing too. I had honestly preferred ChatGPT's, but now I use Gemini just as frequently. And it can really get complex, like something that would be really hard for you to generate, like maybe a heat map of incidents and outbreak. You know, asking where would I get that software? How would I even learn to use it? And it's just for one thing I want to make an image of. That's a nice time to, you know, do this in LLM. The limitations, it still hallucinates, can be inaccurate. I don't use it to visualize my Excel data unless I'm really familiar with it. So I can create a line chart or a pie chart or something like that, or an interactive one at that. But I really want to be careful when it's coming to my numbers. It also has a lack of understanding. Like you can type all the words in and it's still, it's generating things. It doesn't really have a great sense of the understanding of the data. And then additionally, the limitations, sometimes there's complex visualizations that you just, without showing it a picture, which was my hack that I unlocked, sometimes it just can't get where you need it to be. And it's really dependent on prompt quality. So if you're not really great at prompting, highly advise taking one of Brian Kelly's seminars, or there's a lot of them online, getting better at prompting. And then sometimes it has terrible difficulty rendering words. So I tried to do like a word map, and it used like one of the main words, it used it like 15 times, and other ones it didn't use at all, and then it spelt them wrong all over the place. And I was like, I don't know what this is. This is junk. I'm just discarding and trying something new. Clearly this was a limitation. But because it is generative, the same prompt might give you 5 or 6 different variations, and that's pretty wild too. So let's pop out and go back to, we're going to go into Gemini. And I start a new chat, and I'm going to copy from my prompt page. And here I'm going to paste in this question, and I'm going to upload the paper. So it's loaded it. I said generate a concept map illustrating key factors in H5N1 transmission. I have Grammarly working here in the background. And so it's going to think about it. And here's what I wanted to show you with the thinking. So I will read as it's going through, and it's telling me what it's doing. He's diving into the specific, or AI is diving into the specifics. It's broken down. Now it's expanded the concept map. It's detailing transmission. It's structuring map nodes, constructing, developing, and here it is. So it's got this. That's very weird. Not sure what all those are. It's got its formatting pasted in. And it's just citing it repeatedly. So because it could be really weird, I'm actually going to show you an earlier version of this. Okay. Oh, and actually I started working on it. So same prompt, and we are getting this whole description. So it has ways it's being shed in cattle, all these different factors. And I said, can you generate a visual for this? And all of a sudden it came back with this .language code, go find online graph viz viewer. And I was like, I don't know what any of that is, but okay. I set the model, and I'm going to show you, I'm actually going to grab the last, I ask it to re-edit the code. Okay. So here we have this code, and I'm going to copy this. And by this point, this first time I had done it, I didn't know anything. It told me instructions, copy from the first open bracket to the last. So I copied it, and I'm going to open WebGraphis, which is when it told me, and I'm going to replace this. And I'm like, generate it. And that's what it made. So I don't know about you, but that's pretty wild. And it's showing this really complexity of the spread and understanding all these things that were kind of outlined by the paper. And having that visual representation for me helps me gain a better understanding than I might have just reading the words of the scientific text. So I'm actually using a visual to help me digest the information well as well. I've also made a number of infographics. I've made some incredible video using Gemini. It's one of its most powerful thing. And I'm just going to play you, like, I wanted to show a milking parlor, and I said, here's my quote. Hispanic workers, I don't want it to add sound because I want to stitch all this together and add a voiceover, but this is the quality of video that's being generated by AI. It's an 8-second video clip, but it looks hyper realistic to me. I wouldn't be able to tell. And some of the image generation and video generation tools that I've released even this last week, I would actually tell you that if you see something online, you should assume it's AI generated first. We really are at that point now. I don't really have an opinion on that, but we'll leave it as is. All right, I'm not going to get into the AI writing, but you will have it in the slides when I post those, because I really want to get into these last couple concepts in our last 10 minutes. And I gave a comparison side by side with the two tools. Both of them have free versions. I will tell you that Jenny, really powerful, but it does suggest words, and you need to avoid that if you ever get to that, because it is more likely to plagiarize, especially when you're in a niche field, based on the data it was trained on. You need to write using your own words, and refine, and then do grammar checks or things like that, make this sound better. But be really careful with when it's generating writing. It's far better at editing than creation. Okay, ethical AI considerations. Should be obvious, but don't upload any unpublished manuscripts. This can create a whole lot of issues. You need to declare which tools you're using. Don't use it for producing scientific, pedagogic, medical insights, drawing scientific conclusions, or providing clinical recommendations. This is from a number of places online. It's that expert in the loop part. Don't use AI written text as is. It can be unintentional plagiarism, it can have bias, it has certain areas. Be very careful. And AI makes mistakes. You need to develop an intuition on what it may get wrong. From Wiley, when do you need to disclose AI use? When you're drafting and editing text? Okay, you're drafting and editing manuscript sections. This is not for basic grammar, spell checking, language policy, polishing. Sometimes if you are foreign or not a national speaker, it can be really helpful in making sure that it reads well in that language. But that's a pretty good idea there on drafting. Research and analysis, if you're doing your scientific reasoning using AI, the literature synthesis analysis, that's, you know, back and forth, but you can just disclose which tools you use. Using AI generated references or citations, be very, very careful. And then you don't need it for basic literature search, reference formatting, citation management, database searches, all that stuff. And then visual content. Anything you generate with AI visually needs to be disclosed. Not if you're just doing some basic Photoshop, you know, editing, but the statement I've settled on that I really like and have seen used is in preparing this manuscript, poster, abs, you know, whatever you want to call it, The author used these tools for these reasons. And prior to submission, the author reviewed the content, takes full responsibility. Here's the example. Portions of this text were drafted with assistance from Gemini 2.5 by Google. This AI tool helped organize my ideas, suggest alternative phrasing for complex concepts, improve clarity and conciseness through the writing process. All AI-generated content was carefully reviewed, edited, and approved. The final analysis, conclusions, and interpretations represent my views and expertise. I take full responsibility for the content and accuracy of this work. All right, so I'm going to open this up to questions. I will also give you an offer. Only CSU students, only this summer. I will make time if you want to schedule a 30-minute session with me on different AI tools, on your use case in specific, anything you need. One per person though, because there's only so many hours in a day and a lot of other work to do, but I really do want to spend time helping you make this applicable, because I know a lot of people said they were coming from beginner sort of intro level with a few more intermediate users of AI, but not a lot of tool recognition out there. I'm also developing in concert with my other colleagues kind of an AI for research tool directory. So that's in progress, and that'll be in the AI community for practice, which is open for people to join. All right. With that, do we have any questions? You can unmute yourself or answer in the text, and I'm going to stop sharing. And yes, Colleen, any faculty can too.